Jim Pischel came back for his second day on trial for 2 counts of negligent homicide. He took the stand in his own defense. He said he was already through the intersection going 85 miles an hour when he went through a stop sign that resulted in a fatal accident. He said the accident upset him so much it took a hypnotist to bring his memory back. The defense called several highway patrol troopers who said Jim Pischel was a good driver, one of the best in his district, and that 85 miles an hour was not an unreasonable speed to be traveling in a chase. District Attorney Bob Macy tried to show the accident happened in a residential area and that human lives were in danger at such high speeds. He said law enforcement officers are supposed to slow down at intersections. But the defense said Pischel tried to slow down, but it was too late, that it was a judgment call, and that Pischel tried to use his best judgment on that 26th day of June this year. All the evidence has now been presented to the jury. Closing arguments get underway tomorrow morning, and then the jury must decide if Officer Pischel is guilty of negligent homicide. His decision is an important one because it concerns the way law enforcement people respond in chasing suspects when human lives may be in danger. Bella Shaw, Action 4, District Court.
Water is rushing into Lake Hefner now, and it will have to continue for a while to replace the 15-foot loss suffered last summer. The state needs a wet winter to get dried up lake beds looking like lakes again. If we don't get it, water could be even more scarce next year.
It could be a lot worse because we were fortunate this summer because right before it started getting hot, in the middle of June, we'd got all these rains before the drought came, and all of our reservoirs were full. But if, say, we don't get the rains this fall, and say we go into next summer with low reservoirs, then the situation will be compounded because not only will we not have the facilities, adequate facilities, we won't have the source of supply. So
that shortage of sources cost Oklahoma agriculture close to $500 million this year. Fishing and other recreational uses suffered too. There are projects and grants available to help out farmers and communities short on water, but they do not create new sources. So next year, like this year, the state will have to get by with the water available and hope that enough rain falls to keep the reservoirs full. Ted Brown, Action 4.
It only took one day for Mustang residents to get enough signatures for a recall and ouster petition. The citizens want to remove their mayor and a city councilman. They charge the two neglected their civic duties and threatened city employees. Mustang resident Morris Heflin turned the completed petitions into the state attorney general this morning, and now the state has been asked to look into the matter. But that's not the end of the story.
The next step we plan to take is we will have a grand jury investigation petition that will be out and being circulated the latter part of this week, asking for a grand jury investigation of the city of Mustang as well as certain county offices.
The residents hope to turn in a petition for a grand jury investigation early next week. Sue Lauer, Action 4.
They have to throw out over half the names on that.
Downtown streets are deserted on Thanksgiving Day. The people who work here are home. The people who live on the streets have found a home too. The Salvation Army has been feeding the bodies and minds of countless numbers since it began, and today more than 700 people will eat turkey and trimmings. Most don't live conventional lives, and in many cases, life has passed them by. But today, as each year, they find 2 hours of Thanksgiving tradition. Susie Webb, Action 4.
Deb, you want to taste the beans? Sure.
Eddie Sue Hansen is reacquainting her younger sister, Deborah Baratsada, to the ways of the United States again. Deborah and her Iranian husband, Mano, had only intended to stay in Iran a few months while he worked for an oil company. But then came the hostage situation on Deborah's birthday, to be followed by the Iran-Iraq War. After a series of attempts, Deborah persuaded officials to let her leave Iran, first by a 5-day bus ride to Turkey, then a plane ride to London before reaching America. She doesn't think the current deportation drive in Oklahoma is fair to Iranians here.
The students here, I don't think it's fair to them because of what their government is doing to try to, just send them back over there because of the hostages. Because these students that are here, they're studying for their future. They weren't over there when the hostages were taken there. It means a lot for their future.
Okay. $3,000 for a plane ticket and $500 for a passport. She's finally back home. Now hoping that her unborn baby and husband will all be together one day. Back home is just like a car is a true luxury. Southeast Side, it's Stewart, Action 4.
Safeway shoppers have noticed it.
The meat cutters are definitely on strike. The cuts are bad.
And the pickets outside the store leave no doubt. The Amalgamated Meat Cutters, Local 644, are on strike. Their contract ran out 2 weeks ago, and negotiations with the world's largest retail food chain have reached a stalemate. The strike has put about 200 meat cutters and wrappers out of work, but meat is still available on Safeway's racks. Management-level personnel, along with retired workers, were brought in to fill the gap. The temporary employees are getting union-scale wages for their work. That's about $10 an hour. One striker says the company has hired more workers than are out on strike. A Safeway spokesman says they've offered the union an increase in wages that would bring their yearly total to more than $31,000 for a meat cutter. But the strike continues anyway, and neither side would speculate on how long it will last. But if the clerks and stockers decide to honor the picket lines, business at local Safeway stores could be hurt drastically. Ted Brown, Action 4. The Retail Clerks Union, the union representing the great majority of Safeway workers, voted just minutes before the newscast to support the Meat Cutters Union. Meat cutters have been out on strike for the last 2 weeks. The vote was close, but not a surprise to the local union president, Jack Owen.
It affects Oklahoma City and all of the western part and southern part of Oklahoma, and somewhere in the vicinity of 1,300 people.
Did you expect the vote to go the way it did tonight?
Yes, I did.
Why is that?
Well, because I like to think I know my membership.
Right.
I know what they stand for.
Oklahoma City Safeway stores will continue to operate. They will be staffed entirely by management personnel and temporary employees. Ted Brown, Action 4.
The Meat Cutters Union, Local 644, held the picket lines at Safeway for the 15th day. Cutters are asking Safeway for several provisions in their contract, including a higher cost of living increase, increased health benefits, and benefits for retired and senior employees. In most stores, cutters are getting some support from clerks there. The Retail Clerks Union Local 1680 voted Saturday to honor the picket lines, but the Clerks Union guesses as many as half their members still work today. Once all clerks are out, at least 1,300 of them will honor pickets in southern and western Oklahoma. Still, the news of a union settlement in Texas and other negotiations has produced some progress locally. According to Joe Chacoin, the secretary of the Amalgamated Meat Cutters, Local 644, Safeway plans a meeting with the meat cutters on Monday at 1 p.m. in the Federal Mediation Office downtown. Meanwhile, managers, supervisors, and temporary help will handle the meat cutting and clerks' jobs, and it's possible management could be working other jobs this week if the Teamsters and Bakers unions decide to support the striking meat cutters. Rick DeReyes, Action 4.
Is a prime suspect to be closed, mainly because it has two things going against it.
Now let's look at that map on page 40 again. We were talking about land
on the schools that may be closed. Willard has less than 200 students.
Okay, he says turn on Forest Lane by
Nichols Hills, Sunset, Mayfair, Kaiser, and Truman Fifth Year Center. But Willard will be consolidated with Eugene Field if a new school can be built. And that surprised Principal Virginia Thompson.
I think I didn't really know what to expect. We knew that there were no schools nearby that the children could be transported to. And we also know the school is 77 years old and it's not energy efficient. And we knew that there were some problems there. So we really didn't know exactly what to expect. And so, of course, we were very pleasantly surprised.
But most people were not happy with the superintendent's decision. They don't want to see their neighborhood schools closed. And even though closing Willard Elementary is a positive sign, it will depend on the approval of a $4.5 million bond issue that voters may be asked to decide on next fall. Jane Boone, Action 4.
Oklahoma County Sheriff Gene Wells has been receiving federal money for housing government prisoners. He hasn't been turning that money over to the county. We haven't been able to ask him just what he's done with the money, but today the sheriff issued a press release through his office. His secretary says he's out of town. This is the first statement from him since the money issue came up. In his statement, Wells says that no demand has ever been made that the money he receives for feeding the federal prisoners goes into the county treasury. He quoted legal cases saying the law is on his side. I have violated no law. I have not deprived the Oklahoma County Treasury of any money that the law entitles them to receive. He also said all the funds are fully accounted for by his personal bookkeeper and reported to the Internal Revenue Service. The fact remains the sheriff has received more than $63,000 over the past year from the federal government. That's for keeping prisoners in this jail, a jail maintained with county taxpayers' money. Tomorrow, the grand jury is going to ask Sheriff Wells about that money and just how it's been spent. Susie Webb, Action 4, the county jail.
Cars towed, you're going out the back door.
You know, I had $14 worth of tickets the other day. $14. I parked in the garage this time. I think the judge clarified that today, that he is in fact talking about someone to look at the entire department, consider the court order since 1974, and to advise the court, yes, they are in compliance, or no, they're not in compliance. Not someone to supervise me or to be my boss, but to tell the court whether or not all the things that we're telling them are in fact true. I think that's a good move.
Here she is, I guess. Okay. Miss Adams, yeah.
I absolutely deny any wrongdoing, but cannot effectively meet the needs of this office, and in addition attempt to combat the many charges instituted by my political foes.
Sheriff Wells has retired from the sheriff's office. It's my understanding by state law
When people marry, certain rights are created that govern the handling of their property in the event of a death or divorce. But if everybody agrees, these rights, which are created by law, can be modified as long as it is done prior to the marriage. This is done with a pre-marital contract, which is known in legal circles as an antenuptial agreement. Such an agreement lists the parties' property at the time of the marriage and how the property is to be disposed of in the event of death or divorce. The couple agrees to ignore their rights at law concerning their spouse's property in return for the same treatment with their property. Such agreements are popular among those with larger estates, but do have a lot to offer to most couples. For Action 4, this is Ray Vaughn with Legal Briefs.
We've conferred today. I met with the Troopers Association. I met with their attorney, Bob Baker. We did discuss it, and they're going to have some more conversation, more discussion tomorrow. There will be some information released on it Monday.
This is all that's left of the East Side Church of Christ, which were once wooden pews have been reduced to piles of rubble and char. It's become a test for the congregation. Their church building's ruined, but their church spirit carries on.
God, there is bread in the house of thy Father, and 'tis prayer.
They meet in a nearby high school auditorium and fill it to capacity almost every Sunday. There's a spirit of determination here, a will to keep the church together, no matter what, no matter where.
I think it's put everybody closer together. It's like, you know, adversity draws individuals together, and I think it's done this certainly. And the spirit of the congregation is good. I've seen people involved that haven't been involved, you know, a number of years, and so I think this is the real thing.
It's taking some time for the insurance to be processed, but the congregation is already planning their new church, a bigger church this time. They say they need the extra room to hold all that extra spirit. Sue Lauer, Action 4 in Midwest City.
The longtime friends and co-workers of Gene Wells joined police and sheriff deputies from across the state to honor him one last time. A lot of people got to know the sheriff during his 30-year career in law enforcement. Judges, lawyers, state officials, and more than 800 came today to remember. It was just last Wednesday when Wells resigned from the office he loved, the subject of an investigation by the grand jury. And among family and friends, there had been some bitterness surrounding his death. He had said his health couldn't withstand the pressure. After stepping down, he checked into the hospital, where he died early Friday morning. When the service ended, the sheriff's body was taken to Resurrection Memorial Cemetery to be laid to rest. For the people who came, most forgot about the turmoil that surrounded his death and remember his life and the work he'd done for his county. Susie Webb, Action 4.
Community effort, which I'll have to explain to my landlord somewhere.
I don't know. Well, your landlord.
Keep on coming, I won't.
Down here. Generous.
Over the past 10 years, the yellow school bus has become more than just a means of transportation. It's become a symbol of racial desegregation across the country, and now federal legislation is threatening that role. An amendment now in Congress would cut funds to the Justice Department to try to keep them from busing children to desegregate schools. The Oklahoma City School Superintendent says city schools have been busing for 10 years now, and he feels this new amendment won't affect the district.
That amendment, as I understand it, would simply prohibit the Justice Department from using funds to prosecute desegregation cases in school districts where they request a court for a busing plan as part of the mandate to desegregate. To me, that means any new suits that would be filed, and it would not affect those that are already in the courts or plans that have been implemented by school districts over the last 10 or 20 years.
Pesant says busing for desegregation in city schools will continue as normal. The new plan that went into effect this fall should keep schools within racial guidelines for several years. For now, that amendment to cut back on busing has been put on hold in Congress. The next session under the new president will take up the issue. Susie Webb, Action 4.
Emergency lights were the first things the Logan County Jail added after the Health Department ultimatum. Logs that were found out of date are now kept up, and they're searching for additional employees. But the problems are deeper. The jail is 74 years old, and as the state health standards get more strict, it will be tougher for old jails like this one to stay open.
Of course, it all depends on the people, the public, and the county commissioners and the sheriff. You know, it is a big job. And it's a big responsibility that they have. It depends on how much effort and dedication they have to correct the problems.
Most of the people in our county, they are aggressive. I think if we need a new jail, I have to have one. I believe the voters of Logan County will approve. I just have confidence that Logan County will never be closed if it's left to the people.
But it happened to the Canadian County Jail last month. Voters killed a bond that would have built a new jail. This jail is still open, but by October 1st, 1982, all county jails will have to meet strict health standards or be closed. 2 jail bond issues have already failed this year in Oklahoma. So the jails that have problems will have 2 years to find a solution. Jane Boone, Action 4 in Guthrie.
But we know that there's $40 million earmarked, and now I think it's to find the other $60 million.
So you're afraid you're not going to get the payment?
We felt that a 22% would be a reasonable average. We think that from our statistics that it would take considerably more than that on across the board to raise the state employees' wages up to either private industry or the regional average. But a 22% pay increase would be an adequate start to bring up the level of income for state employees, which right now is an average of $8,316 per year per employee.